Gamer Dan, welcome back, man.
Hey, hey.
Yeah, thanks. Well, by the way, how's your thanks very much for the interview. It's been a bit of a hectic week, as you probably, I'm sure my viewers have noticed. Uploading the video sporadically. Just some days I dumped a bulk load, and then some days it's just one after another. I wanted to do it day after day, but uh, things been getting messed up. That's a nice sound effect I have in the background, by the way. It's like, yeah, in the game. Thank God. Oh my gosh, we got the real thing, people. I'm sure progress has been made. So, yeah, we should jump into it. I'm pretty sure we left off with question four answered, but we trailed off down to the tiers of an editor, like you mentioned.
Yeah, we talked about new features and abilities within the game, and I talked about how the Sheikah slate has gone. The classic abilities are gone, but you got new abilities that are able to stick stuff together.
Aha, yes, yes, aha. All right, that was the last point. So in which case that means we finished talking about. So we finished yeah, question four. That sounds like yeah, the features and so on. So let's jump into question five and get rocking. All right, let's do it. Question five. Okay, now, oh, you've got the questions pulled up on your end too?
I do, I do.
All right, so super. So just for the listeners, one of the trademarks of the Zelda series is its puzzle solving elements and dungeons. Now, how did the game's puzzles and dungeons in The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom thus far compare to the previous entries, and were they challenging and rewarding?
Mm. Well, this is as I mentioned in the last video. This is a capital S sequel. It's a direct sequel. So not only is the story continued, but the gameplay's expanded upon. But the core elements of the original game, the Breath of the Wild, are there. So Zelda has long had these dungeons, what we came to call as dungeons, but the ethos behind them were puzzle boxes, little puzzles you had to uncover. And in the first Zelda game, they were literally the first one, they were some of the most fiendish ones ever devised. The item required to beat the boss may not be in the dungeon. You may need an item from a different dungeon to get access to this dungeon. You may need an item you just find in a shop in that dungeon, or you may need nothing. Just your trusty sword might be enough. The dungeons felt organic because they weren't staggered, they weren't linear. As the games progressed, a more structured form occurred. You'd enter, the weapon you get in the dungeon was the one required to beat the dungeon, and then you use that item throughout the rest of the world. Good idea. Solid concept, worked for a very long time. But in Breath of the Wild, they threw all that out to give you all the items, all the abilities you would need in said dungeons right from the get-go. So they gave you everything you would need at the beginning and then said, go and find it. Go and figure it out yourself. They've done a similar thing in Tears of the Kingdom, but they have expanded on the things required in the dungeons. Previously, it was enter the dungeon and use the items, the Sheikah slate, to use the appropriate ability at that puzzle, and you're done. Now, there's all manner of extra things you have to be wary of. You have to be careful of different enemies. You have to try and use things to yourself. They use a lot of dungeons in both games to teach you principles or tricks of the trade. I mention this because I've been stuck on one dungeon, one little shrine, for a while now. And it was one where they took all my armor, all my weapons, all my ammunition, and said, beat this. And I had to use what was available in the room. And it must have taken me no less than 10 times.
Wow.
Because I kept going at it, going, okay, well, if I add this to this and make a better weapon. Nope, there's 5 enemies. They beat my ass. Okay, I'm going to come at them from this side. I'm going to snipe them. No, I've only got 10 arrows. Okay, do this, until I figured out what the game was expected of me, until what the developer was like, hey, this is the way to do it. In which case, I basically hired out mercenaries. I took a bunch of toy soldiers, equipped weapons to them, turned them on, and went, "Come on," and just sent them to kill the enemies while I sat in the distance and went, "Uh-huh,
Oh my god!
glad it's not me."
Oh my
And
God.
eventually, I got bumbled my way through it. But now I'm aware of what those items, these little toy soldiers, these can do. So in the world, if I spot one or if I collect one, I can use it to greater effect. So it's quite clever. Now, narratively, I am aware that just like in the first one, there are a few core dungeons as we would know them, like more meaty challenges that are tied into the story. Haven't got there yet, but I am told that just like in Breath of the Wild, you do gain extra abilities. In Breath of the Wild, after defeating each of the four, legendary beasts, which were basically mechs. Yes, just such a great version. You gained a special ability relating to the characters within that part of the story. I assume that the same is going to be true now. I'm going to gain an ability that's related to the people of the village I saved. What they are, no smegging clue.
I see. It sounds. Wait, this sounds funny. What you described, I mean, in terms of getting pummeled by some of the opponents, until we have to figure out the way to essentially make our own little troops, send them off, and it reminds me of games like Red Dead Redemption. In that the way, just like we were talking about before with the RPG, the JRPG versus the Western RPG, which what we were discussing last time, maybe what to be called simulation when it comes to Western games and more RPG when it comes to Japanese titles, because they're more invested in the actual story, the character. Therefore, you are playing the role of the person. That being said, this game feels, I mean, from what I mean. That being said, I still haven't jumped into Breath, but I'm clearing out my schedule slowly but surely, and definitely I'll bang it out eventually. A lot of catching up to do, but the sorry, what the main point I was going to make was the nature of the Zelda games now sound a lot like the simulations, in that you're in a room where you have tools that have abide by laws of physics, of somewhat, and you have to figure out how to use them, and anything goes. That is to say, if you can pull it off, it's a valid move. It doesn't have to
Oh
be
yeah.
strictly bound to the storyline. So, is this? Do you feel this is like a step towards? Now, this is not the part of the official question, but do you feel this is like a step towards like the simulation perspective, simulation approach to making RPGs that Westerners have?
Absolutely, absolutely. The term I think is bandied around the industry is organic,
Uh-huh.
allowing events and stories to just occur as opposed to being so scripted. With big sandboxes, you have to lean into this because the player has the freedom to go wherever they want. You can't plan what story beats, what points they see in what order. It could be any order. So you have to allow for these moments to occur, and anything that they might need is available, but it's up to the player to use their own ingenuities. In Fallout, it's, hey, I'm going to this place, there's a bunch of guys in between. Do I sneak around them? Do I, barter a trade with them? Do I swoon them if my charisma's high enough? Or do I just pull out a gun and kill them?
I see. Bloody hell! Oh my gosh! I'm gonna catch up quickly. I'm slipping behind. This Zelda game has progressed drastically from the game before.
It doesn't have that level of freedom, but it is a clear leap in this direction, in the idea that Hyrule, the territory the kingdom we save throughout the series, is a living, breathing place. People live here. They do trade. They exist. They have families. They live. They die. They grow without you. Your role is to protect the land that allows people to live, and you get to be a part of that. Spoiler warning. Just a mild spoiler warning. Giving it ahead. I'm going to talk about a major story chain, a major story thread. I've just started it, haven't finished it, but I am going to bring it up. And if you don't want any spoilers for Hayato Village.
All right. Well, in that case, if you can't stand it, skip to question 6 of the next episode, but go for it then.
So, in Breath of the Wild, Hayato Village was one of the last remaining human settlements after the Great Cataclysm, after the bringing up the coming of Calamity Ganon, and it was the place where you were able to build and set up a house of your own. It became a major hub. You would go back there repeatedly because it had lots of the resources you acquired and loads of long story chains. Wonderful. In this one, we enter and the town has grown a little. There's far more people, and there is a new fashion trend. A fashionista, a kind of chic stylist has come and taken the world by storm with her mushroom designed fashions.
Oh my gosh.
So much so that she's put in a bid. She's given a vote of no confidence to the mayor, who's pissed off that she's redecorating his town. So as part of the story, you are an integral player in this mayoral debate. Now, I've just started this, but it feels a little bit, like I said, like a Skyrim or a Fallout, because you can, as far as I'm aware, you can choose which representative you lend your support to. I think mechanically you're going to be able to do both because it's just story chains. But hey, that's another step forward. That's instead of just having a wide world with lots of game mechanics, now we've got story mechanics that are leaning into this simulation FIGS genre, which is interesting.
For sure. Like, I want to see where this goes. I mean, I'd love to hear an update when you progress down that storyline and see how it works. Just being able to dictate how the story flows based on who you choose.
But to tie this whole thing up with a bow, you mentioned about the dungeons. The dungeons are great in Breath of the Wild and in Into the Kingdom. The shrines are back, the small little mini dungeons, and there are larger dungeons based upon story quests. But since in this new incarnation, this new style of Zelda game, the big classic puzzle boxes that had multi-tiered thought puzzling out are gone. The classic Zelda dungeons are gone. We don't have them anymore. Maybe there will be some in the future. Maybe there'll be the odd one. In the Breath of the
Oops, internet's frozen. One moment, people. Dan, hello. Testing. 1, 2, 3. Oh no, people. Sorry, we got a bit of a frozen connection right here. Hold on. I'm gonna try and get Dan to rejoin people. Oh no. Oh dear. That's gonna be an interesting. That was weird, wasn't it? It just kicked me right off. Now I'm gonna have to piece that together when we're done, which is annoying. All right, did you catch yourself just before the break to conclude your point?
Just after. I saw you freeze.
Oh dear, I froze too. I saw you go.
But
yeah, so
it was the same on my end. But anyhow, so are we still recording? Good.
Yes, we're recording. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think the story, ultimately the shrines are mini dungeons. There aren't any larger dungeons, but the quests, the story quests, these feel more like dungeons, like real meaty challenges that a dungeon usually would give.
Maybe in an unflattering manner. Does it get any more brutal?
Yeah, I gotta say some of the shrines in this one are a lot tougher. You're given a lot more freedom with how you approach things, but they tend to be a little bit more unforgiving. There's a lot of simple ones. You go in, add that, move that there, do that, boom, I'm done. But a lot of them require knowledge of objects you may not have interacted with yet. I was stuck on a dungeon for a while until I figured out how a bunch of objects interacted, how they functioned.
Mm.
And then later in the game, I was given a bunch of these things as part of a story quest. I was like, oh, I should have done that first. I would have understood that. Now I get it.
I gotcha. My gosh. All right. So the comments I would want to add here, I'm going to introduce it into the next section because we have three questions today. It's 5, 6, and 7, and by the time I want to split them up into 20-minute intervals each, if that makes sense. All right. So next